Yep, dirty. Did it again. Went straight from my bed to my desk without going to the bathroom first. Oh well, it's okay. I'll get there. Yeah, I have no life. It's not a conventional life, but I'm good with it. You know, I'm creative and constructive, and don't step on people's toes, and do what I can to help people, and a lot of people appreciate that help. Well, I, I've been truth bombing the hell out of the trans folks in the transgender Olympics arguments. Had one of them. This is hilarious. I had one of them uh, hit me up, and he hasn't responded to the last thing. Here's one. You know, I posted this. There was a review of the literature on advantage or disadvantage of transition transgender women, and he the conclusions are inconclusive, but they lean heavily toward no, that's not a problem, and the IOC and NCAA have had standards for decades that work just fine. Everybody's real concerned about Rachel McKinnon and Chelsea Wool dominating their fields. They've quieted down about Fallon Fox finally. She retired, I guess. Um, it, it's all diversion mainly to support arguments against transgender children in all legislation. That's what's going on with this. It's just bullshit. I think her name is Hubbard. There's a power lifter that won an Olympic spot that they're all bent out of shape about in this Guardian article. And the article itself is spawned. Guardian's real transphobic. Um, so there's Dick, and he's like military kind of Dick with heavy metal toys like a big Triumph motorcycle. Now he comes here. He sends me a copy, a screenshot of my post with the link. How does it feel being stupid? Your own link states there's insufficient evidence to support your claim. No, I don't know, dumbass. Tell me how it feels. Let me change that to privileged white prejudice, dumbass. Kill many babies too, hero? I thought so. Zero argument. You have no argument, mighty white man. You're a fascist who came at me with an insult. You're a pathetic joke, you stupid tool. Stupid is as stupid does, and I'm afraid you did a stupid. Wow, you messaged me to tell me I'm stupid. Stupid act number one. Then you said something stupid in response to my calling you stupid back. Stupid act number two. Now you're back telling me some really stupid shit. What do you do for an encore, you dumbass motherfucker? It's not a stupid act to call someone stupid. Read my first message if you're unsure why your comment was stupid. Maybe you'll read articles before making unfounded statements. I read the article, you ignorant, reactionary, transphobic twat. The science is inconclusive but leans heavily in favor of the people thinking there is an unfair advantage trans women have after medical. Uh, the IOC and NCAA have had standards that work for years. This whole debate is nothing but an orchestrated mental conditioning of wage slaves to consent to genocidal measures against transgender people being legislated now. So double down with something stupid and be blocked if you like, but I really don't want to waste bandwidth this morning with a name-calling, hubris-driven, overprivileged white neoliberal fascist with delusions of intellect. And off over here we have, let's see here. I reported somebody. Okay, they didn't. Yeah, Francis Buckley is okay to say that transgender, according to Facebook, just now, I reported somebody for saying that transgender women are just men who claim to identify as women. I reported that as hate speech. Facebook found it acceptable. Make your own decisions on that one. this is interesting because here, the New York Times um, posted today, Israeli airstrikes on May 16th turned 3 Gaza apartment buildings into rubble and killed 44 civilians. We found that Israel dropped heavy bombs without warning and with limited intelligence about what they were attacking. Wow, from the New York Times. I didn't share this yet. I probably should take this over to my blog. It's my friend Rune Lombardo, who's one of the Free Palestine people that I met in the group around Roger Liebman. He's in Denmark. His comment was, apparently Israel can keep waging a high-tech war against the civilian population of Gaza while stealing the lives of Palestinians in East Jerusalem without any useful action being taken by the U.S. or the EU. I hope the fact that traditionally pro-Israel outlets like the New York Times are beginning to bring passionate and truthful reports about the extent and scale of Israeli war crimes and Palestinian suffering is the beginning of a deeper change, which will lead to the end of all this intolerable Israeli cruelty. And I answered him, their story about the children killed in Gaza was a watershed moment for them, marking the first time they didn't dehumanize the victims of Zionist aggression in the entire Middle East, not just Gaza. Zionism has no history other than criminal, from the 1300s in Cromwell's England to today in Sheikh Jarrah, with Zionist Jews from Brooklyn stealing people's homes. It's time the mainstream press starts telling the truth about it. Yeehaw. I'm reporting this shit. Guy brings up a 10-year-old fucking article making a claim about Hamas today with a 10-year-old article. We'll go at him like real cool. How does this 10-year-old article have anything to do with the situation on the ground today? Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived harmoniously on that land for thousands of years. I mean, there was, some humbugs, but nothing like what's been going on since 1917. And nothing like what went on all over Europe, for whatever the reason that went on. I personally think that it was a result of the Khazarian conversion, and the priests never quit practicing the death magic, and all that blood libel really was happening, behind. And then there's like hints of it today in like some odd ceremonies among the Haredim. Anyway, I got distracted from what I was gonna actually read. So I guess this is two. Maybe I should cut this off. Because I was going to do something about this thread they started. I got a brand new hate thread at Kiwi Farms today. But I'll keep this to a reading of the New York Times article and post it together with where'd it go? Here it is. I should probably read this. Yeah, this is a video. It shows the bombing of the towers. And this was published. I hope they don't fucking paywall me here. It looks like they're gonna. Oh, no. Cool. Where's my sound? Where's the fucking sound? I don't even see the mute button on the video. Shit.
Said targeted Hamas, the group that governs Gaza. In 3 apartment buildings in Gaza, killing 44 people. Briarish Quintana is being pulled from the rubble alive.
Holy shit.
But buried underneath are his wife and 5 children.
Oh.
Only Ishkontana and 1 daughter will survive. The strikes were the deadliest of the 11-day Israeli air campaign in May, which Israel said targeted Hamas, the group that governs Gaza. The Times has uncovered new details about these attacks that show how the Israeli military used advanced, precision-guided bombs to hit Ishkontana's neighborhood more than 20 times that night. The Israeli military has said that these strikes were carefully targeted, but our investigation will show how Israel dropped some of the heaviest bombs in its arsenal without warning on a densely packed neighborhood and with limited intelligence about what they were attacking. There is no evidence that Israel struck or directly targeted the apartment buildings. They initially said that they had been aiming at a tunnel which collapsed and brought the buildings down. But weeks after the attacks, and after repeated questioning from the Times, the military said that what they had actually hit was an underground command center, but that they hadn't known its size or exact location before they bombed. Israel says Hamas intentionally builds military infrastructure under residential buildings, which would be a violation of the laws of war. The Israeli military hasn't provided evidence of what it says was the command center. Experts say that the type of Israeli strikes we documented can easily lead to catastrophe and could be a war crime.
يعني تحت الركاب وفي انتظار الموت ما حطتش الياس. يعني كثير شغلات ذكريات أنا يعني موجودة وإسرائيل خصف أخفاها.
15 minutes of it.
On the evening of May 10th, Hamas fired rockets toward Israel in retaliation for Israeli police raids and evictions in East Jerusalem. Israel responded with 11 days of bombing. The campaign killed at least 230 people, according to the United Nations and the Gaza Health Ministry. During that same time frame, Hamas launched more than 4,300 rockets at Israel, killing 13 people. One of the areas most ravaged by Israeli airstrikes was the neighborhood of Rimel in downtown Gaza City. Isolated by Wahda Street, it's home to malls, schools, restaurants, government buildings, and Gaza's biggest hospital, Dar es-Shifa. It's a comparatively upscale neighborhood in an impoverished territory that's been blockaded by Israel and Egypt since Hamas took power in 2007. Because Rimal had been spared in the last Israeli bombing campaign in 2014, many Gazans considered it safe. On the night of May 15th, several families are sheltering in their homes on the same block of Al-Wahda Street. The extended Kolek family lives here, in 2 buildings that were home to 31 people. 37 people live in this building, among them Riyadish Kontana, his wife, and their 5 children. At around 1 a.m., Israeli airstrikes began to pound Rimal.
يعني في الليله هذه بالذات كانت يعني ليله ساخنه.
The Israeli Air Force said that it launched around 100 guided bombs at Hamas tunnels across Gaza that night. The Times used videos to map where some of those bombs fell near the apartment buildings. They show more than 20 strikes across the neighborhood, including ones that damaged government ministries and landed next to a medical clinic. As explosions shake their neighborhood, Ishkantana and his wife put their children to bed and turn on the news. Then, an airstrike.
يعني بدا وهج شديد جدا، يعني لونين احمر واصفر دخل تقريبا في نص الصالون. فهربت انا، بدا الانفجار.
This drone footage, published by the Israeli Air Force on Twitter, shows the moment Ishkantana's building is engulfed in an explosion. And we geolocated this footage that shows smoke rising from or just next to the building as other strikes hit nearby. As the walls of his home collapse, Ishkantana runs to his children's room.
يعني لقيت زوجتي عماله بتسحب في الفرشه او بتسحب في الاولاد، يعني ما تمكنتش لانه كان القصف شديد وسقوط السقف كان سريع.
3 buildings down is the Kolek family. Shukriyo Kolek's mother had told him to bring his wife and children there that night because she thought it would be safer.
أنا لا أعتقد في غزة كلها في مكان آمن زي المكان هذا.
He's just going upstairs to rest when the bomb lands.
سمعت ضربة كبيرة، الأولاد قاعدين يبكوا، ما عرفناش وين نروح. أمي رحمة الله عليها وقعدت تحت جهاز التلفون، جيت أشيلها لفت الدار كلها ووضعنا.
An Israeli drone also captures a strike near the Kolek's building. Zooming in on the video and looking at it frame by frame shows what looks like 2 bombs falling. And then, at least 1 detonation. The explosion envelops the Kolek building. As the neighborhood is bombarded, footage from a drone's heat-detecting camera reveals a line of new impact craters down Al-Wahda Street. Israel said the intense bombing of the Rimal neighborhood was part of a strategy to destroy the Hamas tunnel system, what Israel calls the Metro. Hamas uses tunnels to store weapons, smuggle in banned material, and move fighters around. Doing this under a civilian neighborhood likely breaches international law. In a briefing 3 days after the strikes, former Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused Hamas of creating an underground city of tunnels.
Built a whole infrastructure.
He pointed to a map of Rimal, marking what he said was the tunnel under Al-Wahda Street, with yellow dots indicating the destroyed apartment buildings, which the map labeled as not attacked.
We go to unprecedented lengths to prevent civilian casualties.
This footage we filmed at the scene, like the Israeli drone videos we saw earlier, shows how Israel did bomb straight down Al-Wahda Street, along the line of the suspected tunnel. These satellite images of the apartment buildings before and after the strikes show how they were totally destroyed, unlike the other buildings on the street. The Times spent more than a month investigating these attacks to find out what went wrong. And we examined the Israeli military's explanations, which have evolved as they have conducted their own inquiry. For 2 weeks after the bombings, Israel said that they were targeting tunnels when the buildings collapsed. In June, after repeated questioning, they got more specific. They told the Times that they had hit an underground command center and that they had known it was there all along. But they also acknowledged that they hadn't known its size or exact location at the time of the attack. A senior military official called the mass casualty incident a freak event. Israel hasn't provided evidence of the command center, and Hamas has denied its existence. If Israel's intent was to destroy underground military infrastructure in Rimal, the laws of war obligated them to warn civilians that they were at risk before bombing. But the Israeli official told us that the military didn't think a warning was necessary because they'd conducted dozens of similar bombings in Gaza without collapsing buildings. We watched Israeli Air Force videos to see whether they provided clues about the kind of bombs dropped on Al-Waqt Street. Many showed troops loading jets with Mark 80 series bombs and outfitting those bombs with American-made Joint Direct Attack Munition or JDAM guidance kits. These allow the bombs to strike with precision using GPS. We visited the Gaza police, who showed the Times fragments of munitions that they said were recovered from the strikes on Al-Waqt Street that night. Looking at the markings on the tail fins, the first 5 numbers indicate that it was manufactured by Boeing in the United States, and these numbers are associated with the JDAM kit. Gaza police said that the fragments indicated the use of a GBU-31, a 2,000-pound Mark 84 equipped with a JDAM. It's the heaviest bomb that most militaries use on a regular basis. The Red Cross says weapons like these shouldn't be used in urban areas because of the potentially dangerous consequences. We found that Israeli jets likely dropped at least 4 of these bombs within feet of the apartment buildings. Israeli military officials told us that they programmed fuses to allow these bombs to explode deep underground to increase the impact on the tunnels and minimize damage above. Images of Ishkantena's home show little sign of damage to the surrounding buildings, and the roof, shown here covered in debris, appears to have collapsed intact. All this, experts said, is consistent with a nearby strike from a GBU-31 that penetrated deep underground before exploding. The Israeli military said that all the bombs that night hit their intended targets. But even if that's true, experts say it doesn't make the attacks legal. Saleh Higazi of Amnesty International said that Israel should have foreseen the disastrous effects such strikes on a dead civilian neighborhood could have. Attacking anyway, without warning, and with heavy bombs, could be a war crime, and should be part of an ongoing investigation into Palestine by the International Criminal Court, he said. The survivors of the Waqt Street strikes have spent the night beneath the rubble.
كنت أحافظ على النفس ما بين النفس وما بين إني أحافظ إني ما تضلنيش أندى من خوف ما يصير عندي مضاعفات ما أقدرش أندى في وقت لاحق.
Rescuers find Shukri al-Kolak alive after 11 hours. And in the early morning, Ishkantena is also pulled from beneath his home.
فعلا إجا واحد ونادى مين عايش مين حي مين عايش مين حي فأنا صرت أنادي يا الله يا الله.
Once more, this is wrath. That's still 8
Hours
minutes.
later,
Oh no, just another couple of minutes.
his daughter Susie, 7 years old, is brought out alive.
لما سمعت إنه في بنت من بناتي عايشين قلت الحمد لله رب العالمين لأنه هذه البنت يمكن تنسيني حاجة ولو بقليل من يعني بس من بناتي لأنه هي أختي.
Her mother, 2 brothers, and 2 sisters didn't survive. In all, 22 people in the building were killed, among them 15 members of the Abu Laouf family. One of them was Ayman Abu Laouf, a doctor and head of internal medicine at Dar Shifat Hospital, where he oversaw the coronavirus response. Down the road, another 22 members of the Kolak family were killed. ranging in age from 6 months to 90 years. Without a home, Ishkantana and his daughter are now staying with his uncle.
نعيد النظرة في الحياة من أول وجديد. بدنا يعني نزرع الأمل.
Ishkantana had been working as a waiter in a restaurant, but the coronavirus pandemic cost him his job. Now, the airstrikes have left only him to care for Susie.
أنا يعني أمنيتي الآن الوحيدة إنه ربنا يعني يحقق لي يعني حلم بنتي.
I'm Evan, one of the producers of this video. Our team analyzed satellite images, reviewed dozens of photos and videos, consulted with weapons experts, and repeatedly questioned the Israeli military to bring you this story. It was a complicated and intense month-long team effort, but it was just one of many. You can see more of our investigations by signing up for our newsletter at the link below.
It's late March in a coastal
Okay.
town in Mozambique, and a group of militants is on the
that.
attack. I've interviewed some people.
Get this back in my base. Rune just replied to something, so that's more to read for this. Good. You know, I'm not gonna respond to idiots trying to tell the world that I'm something that I'm not. What I am is an intersex female who was operated on as a child, leaving me with a lot of metabolic disorders that had impacts on me medically and behaviorally because of damage done to my nervous system and endocrine system down there. When they cut on my pubic mound, the protogonadal tissue that had not differentiated yet, that doesn't really totally differentiate completely until you're 25 in your brain and down there. And my brain's wired for female, and I don't know what I had before they cut on me, what it would have grown into. They just didn't like the looks of it and moved my testicles from where they were. I was forced into a male gender role that was totally unnatural, with a body that wasn't very male at all. I mean, you know, sure, now at 67, there's not much femininity left to me, but still in my behavior, it's there. It's obvious to most people that I'm not a man. I'm not a manly man. Okay. I'm a girly guy, naturally born girly guy. Call it what you want. I'm a person with male genitals and female psyche. Go figure. The medical science has been working on it for 50 years, at least, that I've been watching. I am. So, I am a life scientist. My specialty is ecosystem engineering, polyculture, aquaponics, whatever the fuck you want to call it. My degree is in marine science. I never was able to come to terms with the Navy, and was never able to find a job in fisheries, and went into medicine and couldn't stand it because of all the animal torture. Tried to get out into fisheries in the West Coast and places like Scripps, and found the doors locked and ended up in the streets, rescued by the rainbow hippies and the merry pranksters, and trained in how to live on the fringe. I got shot in 1987 and declared psychiatrically unfit to employ in 1988. Instead of giving me a physical disability, they were happy to nut me off. And on Ronald Reagan's Special Solution Initiative, I built real things. And I positively impacted the world. I think the world thinks I have. There's this toxic fan club that really I don't know what to say about it, except hey, you believe what you like. This is me. This is my home. This is my studio. It's a fun place. It's a real fun place. We got lots of cool shit to play with here. And people come and play with it. I do Reiki. Well, I don't even like to call it Reiki. It's energy alignment, balancing, and cleansing, energy transfer. It's working with the biomagnetic field. So, we send and receive clear light energy through our hands, through our eyes, through our we're sending and receiving. We're big transceivers is what we are. We're this biochemical radio that's walking around, we're and influenced by outside, thoughts, impressions, mental impressions. We see things, our brain reacts to what it saw. Where that thought came from, who knows? Oh shit! And now I'm getting engaged by a Zionist. I don't think I want to deal with that right now. Oh yes, I do. We got diverted from the topic. So here's Rune. Yeah, we're getting into it. And Rune's replying to me. It's past time. And yet, aren't we a little surprised that they actually do? I think Palestine has finally perceived this human rights issue, and that makes all the difference. It made all the difference in South Africa. Yeah, so my reply to him is it made a difference in South Africa, and it would be interesting to go look and see where the NYT was and all of that. So my question of this guy here, who had, and it looks like they've taken down the story. Oh no, they did. Yeah, here he wants. Here's, I called him out for a 10-year-old thing from the Hamas founder, and here he's got something more recent about the ceasefire from the.
If tuna is one of the healthiest,
Hamas
cleanest protein you
co-founder.
can eat, then why are we eating more of it? We'll tell you
Shut
exactly
up.
why.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Mahmoud Zaha is back at his Gaza home after 2 weeks lying low. As a founding member of Hamas, he is for Israel a target. First of all, can you tell us the status of the ceasefire? We're a few days into it. It seems to be holding.
Yes, I think most of the important point is the degree of impact on both sides. I think nobody in both sides is looking for escalation more than what happened before. So I believe that it will continue.
11 days of conflict between Israel and Hamas left 260 dead, most in Gaza. Yet Dr. Zaha claims Hamas achieved a strategic and symbolic victory.
The new element here is the degree of the resistant movement, particularly in Gaza, to attack the Israeli targets in very important points, including most of the overcrowded area in the civilian society. So for how long the Israeli will accept that, I think this is the main issue.
You are firing missiles, rockets and missiles from civilian areas here in Gaza at civilians in Israel. That's not acceptable. That's a war crime.
No single rockets were sent from a civilian area. Most of the rockets from the border.
That's not true, though, is it? Because we've
This
seen
is true.
we've seen video of rockets being fired from within the built-up area of Gaza City at Israeli communities.
This is not against Israeli community. This is against Israeli occupation. This is against Israeli aggression.
Are you not at least in part responsible for the conditions here? Because you, Hamas, spend your money on weapons, you spend your money on tunnels, you spend your money on fighters. You are not spending your money on the civilian population here.
Give me one example in the world that they have no military minister to defend themselves. We are here protecting ourselves against aggression, against the Israeli aggression.
Does the state of Israel have the right to exist?
No. Why? Why? You are coming from America and you took my house. You came from Britain and you took my brother's house. This is a settlement. This is a settlement, you are not a citizen. We are the owner of this. This is area, Arabic area, well known. This is well known as Islamic area, well known.
So you are telling me now that you don't think the two-state solution is possible?
Practically, that was proved. It is not my assessment.
This is the nub of the issue. This is really important. If a future Israeli government accepts...
I'm not answering about if. I'm not answering if. I'm answering practically.
Okay.
Practically, the Palestinian Authority, Fatah Group, Fatah Organization, accepted two-state solution. Go and ask Mahmoud Abbas, are you now addressing that two-state solution is viable or not? He will say no. So if this question is practically answered, why now you are asking me?
Well, because you are a founding member of Hamas, and if Hamas is able to come around the table with the Israelis at some stage in the future, then the bloodshed that we are seeing here can stop.
We came to the vicious circle. The people went and they sat down on the table and they signed an agreement and so on and failed. You are now asking me to practice a failed process?
I just really want to understand whether you, as a Palestinian, are willing to share the land with Israeli Jews. Two states, one land.
We are not against Jews, because Jews were living in this area for a long centuries. I'm speaking about occupation.
If President Biden was willing to sit down with you, with Hamas, would you talk to him?
Why not? Why not? Why not? Mr. Biden, yes, he is supporting Israel, but I think we have a mission as a Palestinian people to speak to him frankly.
It will come as a relief for many that senior Hamas officials believe this ceasefire will hold for now. But like so much in this conflict, the gulf between the two sides remains vast.
Let me ask you one last thing. How would you define peace?
Peace means justice. No peace without justice.
And the prospects for long-term peace as elusive as ever. Mark Stone, Sky News in Gaza.
You heard it yourself, where he said that it's not the Jews, it's the occupation. The Jews have lived here for centuries. And that's the way it should be. That's the way that the early leftist Zionists like Hannah Arendt and Albert Einstein and Chaim Weizmann were looking at what they called a binational republic, modeled after constitutions of the Western societies, that where the indigenous Palestinians, Christian, Muslim, and Jewish Palestinians, you know, the Balfour Declaration, the Peel Commission report, the UN partition resolution, they all stipulated that existing non-Jewish communities must not be harmed. And they built the whole entire country on top of the rubble of communities that they destroyed. The residential areas, they're shooting the rockets at Sderot, which is an immigration indoctrination center, are coming from the neighborhoods where the people of Hoods and Nods were exiled in 1948 to get them out of the way of the advancing Egyptian army. You know, the Zionism has nothing but a criminal history, starting with Cromwell. It was a means of getting the Jews to leave on their own, instead of rounding them up, killing them, and running them off. And that gets back to why. And that comes down to most Jews are like doing the best they can to live according to Torah law. Other Jews are like taking advantage of certain loopholes that the other side left in there for backsliders to pick up on, and you know, have been so unscrupulous in their financial dealings that's become synonymous with unscrupulous financial dealings. And you know, this whole Jew banker thing is like, well, hey, look, none of those guys like the Rothschilds are actually like practicing Jews. And people like the Morgans aren't practicing Christians either. It's religious nationalism that they're promoting, this Judeo-Christian ethic. You know, that white Anglo-Saxon work ethic and all that happy shit. And you know, it's a winner take all, kill or be killed kind of a society they've built, and they're running it from the peak of from the tip of the pyramid. With a nuclear-proof ceiling below them, playing the billionaires for useful idiots. With the Koch brothers and the Waltons stirring up all the idiots that stormed the Capitol on the 6th of January. That was holy shit. There were state legislators. There were active duty police and military. There was middle and upper management of corporations with like more than 200 employee kind of corporations. It just like, it didn't look like, it sure didn't look like any of the hippie things that they pulled off in DC or Peach Park stuff, or BLM or any of it. As far as the demographic of the crowd, these were like privileged people that were angry and scared, instead of underprivileged speaking out with their grievances. Most fuckers were ready to lynch Republicans and Democrats. It's crazy, and they're just like only prosecuting the wingnuts and a few Proud Boys, which, you know, they'll just do it again someday if they don't get the big boys. Trump needs to be indicted, put in prison. I mean, it's just like the way it's got to be. The man's been running a criminal organization for the last 40 years. Anyway, let's see well, let's keep the focus on what's going on here. So to this guy, I'm saying back. So what he had originally written was the majority of Palestinians aren't fighting for the Israeli withdrawal from the West Bank and Gaza. Their goal is the destruction of Israel, the state, not Israel, the people. It's very important. We must distinguish between Zionism and Judaism. That the core principles of both are diametrically opposed. You can't be a Zionist Jew and a Jew faithful to Torah law at the same time. It can't be. The Palestinians voted Hamas into power in 2006. Polls show they would win an election again today. This is the extremism they stand for. Khalid Mashal said 10 years ago, Palestine is ours from the river to the sea and from the south to the north. There will be no concession on an inch of the land, he told the crowd on his first visit to Gaza. We will never recognize the legitimacy of the Israeli occupation, and therefore there is no legitimacy for Israel, no matter how long it will take. And that is true. The state of Israel is illegitimate. And my response to him is that I'm a Kohen, and I don't think the Zionist state has any right to exist either. But if you listen to these people, they're all saying that the enemy is Zionism, not Judaism, and Zionism is not Judaism. Let's change that. To the Zionist project. Jews have always been welcome to live in their ancestral lands, but our tradition and laws forbid what a pack of industrial fascists led by the Rothschild dynasty are doing there since 1948. So, and here's somebody, gosh, it was that long ago, it was in the 80s that the campaign was against the South Africans. You know, it's funny that back then, you know, in the 70s as it was getting ramped up for all that, you know, as people's awareness was raised of this kind of economic and social injustice that was happening all over the world because of industrial fascism masquerading as democracy. The Jewish kids were out like marching and campaigning to save Soviet Jews. Now, little did we know what they were going to do when they got to Palestine. It's shameful. And I guess to wrap, there's no reason, you know, babble on right now. This is already almost an hour long. As long as there's profit in the warfare, settler colonialism, it will persist. We have only this decade to make a course correction in our technology before the planet's quantum mechanics just overwhelms the industrialized society and rewilds it. What's going to happen? There's already millions of people that are being displaced by climate disasters every year. for the past few years, and this was all predicted for the last 50. So I'm very proud to be one of the people say, hey, we've been saying this straight along, but we're here, and it's not happening in the halls of our government right now. The Republicans are being obstructionists. The Democrats are really just, trying to keep business as usual going for the war toys industry, and try to, just throwing bones to the people to keep them appeased. There has to be a global ceasefire. There has to be a global ceasefire and greening of the military. And I pissed the Zionists off. He just made the angry face emoji at what I posted. So maybe this will go on for a little more because he's probably going to come raging back at me. The curse says, may you be born in interesting times. Not these are the most interesting of interesting times I've read about. And I sure got dealt an interesting hand. And I've even got a toxic fan club. That's really way cool. I guess I should be really proud of myself as a gonzo journalist to have a toxic fan club in 2021. So let's see what dude said in his rage at me. He hasn't come back yet. It's interesting. At least he's thinking about it. Oh yeah, I never did finish that from yesterday. Fuck. Yeah, I better just make a different one to read this shit. Okay, here it is. Something tells me I'm going to meme him. So here is it. It looks like it might help if you learn some history. Zionism in the 1300s. It only started in the late 1900s. You're sure you want to keep up that up where regular people can read it, thereby embarrassing yourself publicly. It looks like you've only been reading the revised Zionist version of Jewish history. 1300s is a typo. It was the 1600s, and it was a means of getting the Jews to leave on their own in Cromwell's era. Modern political Zionism is a scheme of the Rothschild crowd that traces back to 1776. Rothschild schemes on Jerusalem were published in newspapers in the 1820s, and Lord Rothschild bragged about their role in the genesis of the state during the Balfour Centennial. You regular people are an embarrassment to those of us who don't swallow lies whole. That's so cute. Let's see what the other ass clown was raging at me with. And so, yeah, I don't know if I want to keep this up very long, but it's a good example of what the kind of jousting that goes on around the news in the comment sections that I'll be reporting on here a lot. This is, this is how I spend my morning, and I take notes, and don't kick any ass and take good notes. So what was I doing? Looking for the Yakov Shapiro lecture, which is a real common one for me to put in there. Shapiro. As a spokesperson for the True Torah Jews, did a lecture called "Has Zionism Hijacked Judaism?" by Rabbi Yakov Shapiro, which outlines what I'm talking about real comprehensively. Hello, what am I looking for here? We're going back to this, yes. So what I said to this guy, he comes at me, it's racist to say Jews shouldn't have a nation of their own because they are Jews. It's foolish to call Jews a race, and chauvinistic Jewish nationalism that this ersatz Jewish democracy with the world's most moral army is expressing is diametrically opposed to the core principles of the Hebrew faith they claim to represent. I don't know what God you're listening to, but the God of my ancestors is roaring, not in my name, when he views atrocities like this through my eyes. Rabbi Yakov Shapiro, a spokesperson for the True Torah Jews, explains it very well. If you respond to me in less time than it takes to listen to this lecture, you will be declaring your intellectual incompetence to mount a rational argument in defense of the Zionist state in halakhic terms. This is an argument that I've been having for the last 12 years with these people, is that your entire argument for the existence of this Jewish state is political. The religious argument is all against it. Every last bit of it. The three oaths, I should read that as long as I'm here. This is the core of the halakhic argument, because it's not really halakha, it's midrash. There's three oaths is a popular name for midrash found in the Talmud, which relates that God endured three oaths upon the world. Two of the oaths pertain to the Jewish people, and one of the oaths pertains to the other nations of the world. The Jews, for their part, were sworn not to forcefully reclaim the land of Israel, which is not, that's a Zionist term. Eretz Yisrael, that's a Zionist term. Six-pointed star was a pagan thing back then. The Jews used the menorah. Chai. Their symbols are not the six-pointed star. And not to rebel against the other nations, and the other nations in turn were sworn not to subjugate Jews excessively, which they never did in Palestine. The religious Zionists will use the Shoah as their reasoning for the first two oaths to be vacated, because the Gentiles had murdered so many Jews, where other Haredim will argue that the Shoah was punishment for what they were already doing improperly in Palestine. The law is very clear on, there's no, I mean, they use these like really weird midrashim from obscure Talmud discussions between these fruitcake rabbis that were like supremacist rabbis, that I didn't even know they existed until the Zionists started defending themselves. I mean, like, we never were, that wasn't the kind of Talmud we were taught when we were kids. I come from a pretty secular congregation. We were taught Torah, and we had Shema hammered into us hard. But Talmud was mostly, you know, in terms of living righteously. You know, the teachings of Nachmanides and Maimonides and Rashi and the commentary on the law and expanding on things that were good about the law that we should and shouldn't be doing. And then there's like all these like supremacist things that the Zionists will dredge out, or anti-Zionists will dredge out, saying that the Zionists use it. That's just not what the Torah says. That, you know, we're supposed to love God and love each other, and not steal or lie or cheat or any of these other things. And there's no mandate for suspension of these rules in the name of a Jewish state. There isn't. The Rothschilds are not. Nobody in the Rothschild family qualifies as Messiah, and their money isn't God. And I think right there is where I'm going to wrap it. So thanks for watching. Happy day. Bye.